The
Don't drink
CEO
it and
lifted the
leave now.
glass to
It's
his
not
lips
safe here.
when a trembling hand brushed his sleeve and a folded note appeared on the table. "Don't drink it. Leave now." His heart skipped. He looked up at the waitress, fear and courage battling in her eyes. What he did next would change both their lives forever. If you love powerful stories of kindness, courage, and unexpected twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel Soul of Kindness right now. Don't miss what happens next. The restaurant shimmered like a jewel box carved out of glass and gold, the kind of place where deals were whispered instead of spoken and every smile carried a price. Soft piano notes drifted through the air, blending with the muted clink of crystal glasses and the low murmur of influential voices. At a secluded corner table sat Adrian Vale, CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech empires in the country, a man whose name alone could make stock prices tremble. He was calm, composed, and perfectly still, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked as if it had been tailored around power itself. Tonight was supposed to be simple, a quiet celebration of a ruthless corporate victory finalized just hours earlier. The waiter placed a glass in front of him, a deep red drink catching the warm light, and for a brief moment Adrian allowed himself the smallest breath of satisfaction. That was when she approached. The waitress moved carefully between tables, balancing plates with practiced ease. But there was something different about her, something tense, fragile. Her name tag read Lena. She looked young, too young for the shadows under her eyes or the tightness in her jaw. As she reached Adrian's table, her hands trembled so slightly that most people would never notice. But Adrian noticed everything. She set the plate down, leaned in just enough to appear professional, and in that fleeting second, her fingers slid a folded piece of paper onto the white tablecloth. Their eyes met. Hers were wide, dark, and burning with urgency. Then, just as quickly, she straightened up and turned to leave. Adrian's fingers closed around the note, his instincts firing like alarms. He unfolded it slowly beneath the table, his heartbeat steady but heavy. "Don't drink it, and leave now." The words were hurried, uneven, written by someone whose fear had no time for neatness. Adrian's gaze snapped back to the glass, then to the retreating figure of the waitress. For the first time in years, uncertainty crept into his mind. He didn't drink. Instead, he pushed the glass away and rose from his chair. "Miss," he said calmly. Lena froze mid-step. The world around them continued as if nothing had changed. Laughter, music, wealth flowing freely, while a silent storm gathered between them. Adrian reached out and gently but firmly took her wrist. "Sit," he said, his voice low, controlled. Lena's breath caught, panic flashing across her face. I can't," she whispered. "Please, you have to go." Adrian studied her, the fear etched into every line of her expression. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't attention-seeking. This was terror mixed with resolve. "Why?" he asked quietly, pulling out the chair across from him. Lena hesitated, eyes darting toward the kitchen and the bar, then the far end of the restaurant. "They're watching," she said under her breath. "I shouldn't even be here." Adrian felt a chill crawl up his spine. His entire career had been built on calculated risks, but this was different. He'd faced hostile boardrooms and vicious rivals, but never something that felt so immediate, so human. "Who?" he asked. Lena swallowed hard, her fingers clenched in her apron. "I heard them," she said. "In the kitchen, 2 men. They don't work here. They were talking about you, about making sure you didn't leave." Adrian's jaw tightened. He glanced at the glass again, the rich red liquid now looking darker, heavier. "What did they do?" he asked. Lena's voice shook. "One of them poured something into your drink when the—" Waiter turned away. The words landed like a gunshot in Adrian's mind. Poison, sabotage, assassination. The reality hit him with brutal clarity. He slowly reached for his phone, but Lena shook her head frantically. "Not here," she whispered. "Please, if they notice—" Adrian slipped the phone back into his pocket and stood. "Walk with me," he said. "Now." Lena hesitated, fear battling with duty, but finally nodded. As they moved toward the exit, Adrian's posture remained relaxed, almost bored, the mask of power firmly in place. Inside, his mind was racing. Outside the restaurant, the night air felt cold and sharp, cutting through the illusion of safety the building provided. Adrian stopped beneath the glow of a streetlight and finally looked at Lena properly. She was shaking now, adrenaline wearing off, reality crashing in. "You just risked everything," he said quietly. "Why?" Lena's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Because if I stayed quiet," she said, "I'd never be able to live with myself." The word struck Adrian harder than any threat ever had. In that moment, he realized something terrifying and profound. His wealth, his influence, his power had nearly failed him, and it was a young waitress with nothing but courage who had stepped in to save his life. And as the distant hum of traffic filled the silence, Adrian knew this was only the beginning of a story far bigger than either of them had imagined. The night outside the restaurant felt unreal, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Neon lights reflected off the wet pavement, cars passed by unaware, and somewhere inside, glasses were still being raised in celebration. Adrian Vale stood beneath the streetlight, his mind working faster than ever before, every instinct screaming that this danger was not over. Lena wrapped her arms around herself, the thin fabric of her uniform offering no protection against the cold or the fear still gripping her chest. Adrian took off his suit jacket without thinking and draped it over her shoulders. She looked up at him, startled, as if unused to kindness without conditions. "We can't stay here," she whispered. "If they realize you left—" Adrian nodded. He signaled to his driver, who had just pulled up, and opened the back door. "Get in," he said softly. Lena hesitated again, doubt clouding her face. "I don't even know you," she said. Adrian met her gaze steadily. "You knew enough to save my life." That was all it took. She slid into the car, clutching the jacket tightly around her as if it were armor. As the car moved away from the restaurant, Adrian pulled out his phone and sent a single coded message to his head of security. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. Years of preparation had taught him that fewer words meant fewer mistakes. He looked at Lena again. "Start from the beginning," he said. Lena took a deep breath, staring out the window as the city blurred past. She spoke slowly at first, then faster, as if the fear she'd been holding back finally had permission to escape. She told him how earlier that evening she'd been assigned an extra shift, how the kitchen had been unusually tense, how two men she'd never seen before stood too close to the counter, pretending to be delivery staff. She'd overheard fragments of their conversation. His name, his table number, the word tonight. When she'd seen one of them slip something into the drink, her heart had nearly stopped. "I thought about walking away," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I have a brother. I need this job. If I get fired—" Her words trailed off. Adrian listened in silence, the weight of her choice settling heavily in his chest. He knew how rare that kind of courage was. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. Lena let out a shaky laugh. "It didn't feel right," she said. It felt terrifying. The car slowed as it turned into a secure underground garage beneath one of Adrian's buildings. Security guards moved quickly, alert but discreet, escorting them inside. Lena's eyes widened at the scale of everything, the cameras, the controlled doors, the silent efficiency. "Am I in trouble?" she asked. Adrian shook his head. "You're safe," he said, "and you will stay that way." Inside the private office, Adrian finally allowed himself to exhale. He handed Lena a glass of water, watching closely as she drank, still shaken. Minutes later, his security chief arrived with grim confirmation. The drink had been tampered with, the substance lethal in small doses. The plot had been real, immediate, personal. Lena sank into the chair, her knees weak. "I could have died," Adrian said, not accusingly, but with awe. Lena looked down at her hands. "So could I," she replied. That simple truth hung between them. Adrian realized then that while he had bodyguards and systems designed to protect him, Lena had walked straight into danger with nothing but her conscience. As the night wore on, details emerged. Corporate rivals, desperation, a plan built on greed and silence. Adrian felt anger simmer beneath his calm exterior, but it was matched by something unfamiliar: gratitude. When everything settled, he turned to Lena. "You shouldn't go back to that restaurant," he said. "Not yet." Panic flashed across her face. "I need the money," she said quickly. Adrian held up a hand. "You won't lose anything," he promised. "I'll make sure of it." She studied him, searching for hidden motives, but found none. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Adrian didn't answer right away. He thought of the note, the trembling hand, the risk she took without knowing who he was beyond a face and a table number. "Because tonight," he said finally, "you reminded me that power means nothing without people willing to protect what's right." Lena felt tears spill over at last, the tension breaking. She hadn't meant to become part of something bigger than herself. She'd only meant to stop a wrong. But as dawn crept closer and the city began to stir, both of them understood that nothing would ever go back to the way it was. A line had been crossed, a bond formed, and a future rewritten by a single folded note and a choice made in fear, but guided by courage. Morning arrived quietly, as if the city itself was unaware of how close it had come to tragedy the night before. Pale sunlight slipped through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Adrian Vale's private office, casting long shadows across polished floors and steel-framed walls. Lena sat on the edge of a leather chair, hands wrapped tightly around a warm cup of tea someone had placed in front of her hours ago. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the glass on the table, the dark liquid inside it, and the moment she'd made the choice that changed everything. Adrian stood near the window, jacket off, tie loosened, looking less like the untouchable CEO the world knew, and more like a man carrying the weight of narrow escape. Overnight, his security team had worked relentlessly. The men responsible had vanished, but the trail they left behind was clear enough to confirm what Adrian already suspected. This had been carefully planned, and it wouldn't be the last attempt if he let his guard down. Yet, as reports were quietly delivered, and decisions made with calm precision, Adrian's thoughts kept returning to Lena. She was still here, still shaking slightly despite the safety surrounding her. He turned and finally broke the silence. "You don't have to be afraid," he said gently. "No one will touch you." Lena looked up, her eyes tired but sharp. "I wasn't afraid for myself," she said. "I was afraid of doing nothing." The honesty in her voice stopped him. He had spent years surrounded by people who calculated every word, every move, based on advantage. Lena spoke as if truth was the only currency she owned. Adrian sat across from her, resting his elbows on his knees. "Tell me about your life," he said. She hesitated, then shrugged. "There's not much to tell," she replied. But as she spoke, a story unfolded, one of long hours, missed chances, and quiet responsibility. She told him about her younger brother, still in school, still dreaming, and how she worked double shifts to keep those dreams alive. She spoke of a father who had taught her right from wrong without ever using those exact words, and a mother who had passed too soon, leaving Lena to grow up faster than she was ready for. Adrian listened, something tightening in his chest. He realized how protected his own rise had been by resources and mentors, even as he told himself he was entirely self-made. Lena had none of that. And yet, when faced with a moment that demanded courage, she hadn't hesitated. "You could have walked away," Adrian said quietly. "Most people would have." Lena met his gaze. "Most people do," she replied. That simple sentence echoed louder than any boardroom argument he'd ever won. Later that day, Adrian arranged for Lena to meet with legal and security advisors, not as an interrogation, but as protection. Every step was taken discreetly, no headlines, no interviews. He understood that fame could be as dangerous as silence. When it was over, Lena stood by the window, looking out at the city she'd always felt invisible in. "What happens now?" she asked. Adrian considered the question carefully. For once, the answer wasn't written in contracts or forecasts. "Now," he said, "you stop surviving and start choosing." She turned to him, confused. He explained his foundation, one he'd funded generously but rarely involved himself in personally. Education programs, scholarships, training opportunities. "I want you to be part of it," he said, "not as a symbol, as someone who understands what real risk looks like." Lena's first instinct was to refuse. "I don't want pity," she said firmly. Adrian nodded. "Neither do I," he replied. "This isn't pity, it's respect." The word caught her off guard. No one had used it like that before. As the hours passed, something shifted between them. Not dependency, not romance, but trust. Adrian found himself questioning old assumptions, re-examining choices he'd made in the name of efficiency, while overlooking humanity. Lena, in turn, began to see that power didn't always mean cruelty or distance. Sometimes it meant responsibility. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Adrian received confirmation that the immediate threat had passed. The poisoners were identified, the motive exposed, yet instead of relief, he felt resolve. He looked at Lena and said, "Last night could have ended my life." She shook her head. "No," she said softly, "it reminded you of it." The word stayed with him long after she was escorted to a safe place for the night. Alone again, Adrian returned to his desk, staring at the folded note he'd kept in his pocket since the restaurant. The paper was creased, the ink slightly smudged, but the message was clear. One act of courage had cut through layers of wealth, power, and protection, and reached him in a way nothing else ever had. He knew then that whatever came next, his world would no longer be built on numbers alone. And somewhere in the city, a young woman who once served tables was unknowingly reshaping the future of a man who thought he had everything. Weeks passed since that night, but neither Adrian nor Lena forgot what had happened. The city moved on, unaware of the quiet drama that had nearly claimed a life. Yet for Adrian, everything had changed. In the boardrooms where he once ruled with precision, he now thought differently. Decisions were no longer just about profits or influence, they were about responsibility, humanity, and the kind of impact power could have when wielded wisely. Lena, on the other hand, had found herself in a world she never imagined, a world of resources, safety, and opportunity, but one that was completely foreign. She moved cautiously, still unsure how to balance the life she'd always known with the new doors opening before her. One morning, Adrian called her into his office. She arrived dressed simply, her nervousness apparent, but her posture proud. He smiled, not the corporate mask he often wore, but a genuine, warm expression. "Good morning, Lena," he said. "I want to show you something." He led her to a corner of his office that overlooked the city, pointing to a sleek glass building across the street. "This will be your new training center," he explained. "It's part of the foundation. You'll help guide young people, give them the opportunities you never had, and ensure they're equipped to make the right choices." Lena's eyes widened. She tried to speak but found words failing her. I don't know what to say," she finally whispered. Adrian chuckled softly. "You don't have to say anything. Just show up, teach, inspire, and always remember that courage doesn't require perfection. It only requires willingness." Over the next few months, Lena flourished. She learned quickly, adapting to the structured environment while infusing it with compassion and real-life experience. She shared her story with the students she guided, emphasizing the importance of integrity, quick thinking, and the courage to act, even when no one is watching. Adrian observed from behind the scenes, noting how her presence brought a unique energy to the foundation. She reminded him of what mattered beyond the balance sheets and quarterly reports. One evening, after a particularly successful mentorship session, Lena walked back into Adrian's office, a rare smile lighting up her face. "I never thought I'd feel proud," she admitted. "Proud of myself, proud of helping others. I always thought I'd just survive." Adrian nodded, his own heart swelling. "Survival is just the beginning," he said. "What you do after, that defines your life." Their relationship remained professional, yet deeply human. They learned from one another. Adrian's walls softened, Lena's confidence grew, and the city outside continued its endless rhythm, unaware that two lives had intertwined in a way that would ripple far beyond what anyone could see. Months later, a charity gala hosted by Adrian's foundation brought them together once again, this time in front of hundreds of influential people. The room buzzed with excitement, cameras flashing, microphones ready. Adrian took the stage, but his eyes sought Lena in the crowd. She stood quietly, observing, a sense of calm confidence replacing the fear she once carried. "Tonight," Adrian began, his voice clear and steady, "I want to talk about courage. Not the kind celebrated in stories or movies, but the quiet, unseen courage that whispers warnings, saves lives, and expects nothing in return." He paused, and Lena felt a lump in her throat. He continued, "Someone once risked everything for me. Someone who had no reason to, no gain, and no guarantee of safety. Yet she acted. She reminded me what really matters." Cameras captured the moment, flashes illuminating the gratitude in Adrian's eyes and the subtle tears in Lena's. It was a story the world would never fully know, yet it resonated with every person in the room. After the applause died down, Adrian met Lena in a quiet hallway. He handed her a small folded note, mirroring the one she had once slipped across a table in a restaurant. She opened it, her hands shaking slightly. "Thank you for reminding me what truly matters." Lena smiled, her heart full. "I think I understand now," she said softly. "It's not about wealth, status, or power. It's about choice, courage, integrity." Adrian nodded. "Exactly, and now it's your turn to inspire others, just like you inspired me." That night, as they left the gala together, Lena realized she was no longer just a young woman surviving life's harsh realities. She had become a guiding force, shaping futures and redefining what leadership meant. And Adrian, the man who once believed only power could protect him, had learned that true strength often came from those we least expect. Their story, quiet yet profound, was a reminder that a single act of courage could change lives, open doors, and shift destinies in ways neither time nor wealth could ever measure. Somewhere in the city, beyond the glass and steel, ordinary people walked unaware, yet the ripple of that night, the note, the warning, the choice, had already begun to touch lives far beyond those two individuals. And for anyone watching, reading, or listening, it was a reminder that courage and kindness were still alive, waiting to be acted upon in the most unexpected moments. If this story inspired you, like the video and subscribe to Soul of Kindness. Remember, a single act of bravery can change the course of a life, sometimes even your own.